The middle class isn't going broke because of bad spending habits. It's going broke because the system was rebuilt to make sure it does. Right now, American households are sitting on $18.8 trillion in debt, a number so large it has stopped feeling real. But here's the part that gets me. That number is already inside your balance sheet. By the end of this video, you'll understand the three-part mechanism quietly transferring middle-class wealth upward, and why almost nobody is framing it that way. That $18.8 trillion figure from the hook, let's make it land somewhere real. Consumer debt in the US hit $18.8 trillion, and when you divide that across households, it works out to an average of roughly $105,000 per household. But that average includes the mortgage, which most people mentally file under investment. Strip that out and focus on the stuff that doesn't build equity. The credit cards, the auto loan, the student debt, and the picture gets uglier fast. The average credit card balance is sitting at $6,715. Auto loan debt has climbed to $1.69 trillion nationally, with the average new vehicle loan at origination exceeding $33,000, and average outstanding balances per borrower around $24,000 to $25,000. And student loan debt stands at roughly $1.83 trillion. Stack those three categories on a single middle-class household, and you're looking at a non-mortgage debt load that for millions of families exceeds $50,000. That's not a debt balance. That's a second mortgage nobody agreed to take out. Now here's where the wage cost scissors come in. The middle class didn't borrow because it stopped being responsible. It borrowed because the math stopped working. Housing costs outpaced income. Healthcare costs outpaced income. The price of a 4-year degree outpaced income by a factor that would have seemed fictional 30 years ago. Real wages, meaning what your paycheck actually buys after inflation, have barely moved for the median household across the last several years, while those three cost categories kept climbing. The borrowing wasn't reckless. It was arithmetic. The gap between what things cost and what paychecks cover had to be filled with something, and the financial system had a very convenient product ready to hand over. That product is the credit card. And the interest rate attached to it right now is the part that turns a manageable gap into a compounding trap. The average APR across all accounts was 21% in the first quarter of 2026. That's near historic highs, a sharp increase from the 15 to 16% averages seen just a few years ago. And here's the mechanic that makes this so brutal: the minimum payment. If you carry a $5,000 balance at a 20% APR and make only minimum payments, you'll be in debt for about 23 years and pay roughly $7,523 in interest alone. You borrowed $5,000 to cover the gap. You end up paying back nearly $13,000. And that number is not a mistake. That is the product. The minimum payment structure isn't a consumer convenience. It's an extraction schedule dressed up as flexibility. And the extraction is accelerating, because the people most likely to be making minimum payments are the same people whose wages fell furthest behind costs, which means the compounding hits hardest exactly where the cushion is thinnest. Even as the Fed cut rates 3 times in 2025, the average credit card interest rate continued to climb rather than offering the relief millions of cardholders were hoping for. That disconnect isn't coincidental. Credit card issuers typically don't pass along rate reductions at the same pace they were hiked, and they tend to keep overall rates elevated. The system adjusts fast when rates go up. It moves slowly, if at all, when they come back down. So the wave isn't theoretical. Delinquency rates, accounts 30 days or more behind on a payment, are already rising, with delinquency rates are already rising across categories. Auto loan serious delinquency hit 5.2% in Q4 2025, near the 2010 post-financial crisis peak, while credit card 90-day delinquency reached 12.4% in Q3 2025. Auto loans 60 days or more past due ticked up in the fourth quarter of 2025. These aren't leading indicators of trouble ahead. They are the wave, already moving, already breaking over the households that got squeezed first. But here's what the delinquency data doesn't tell you on its own: where the money goes when the middle class pays interest. Every dollar flowing out of a household balance sheet in interest payments flows into someone else's income statement. And in 2025 and 2026, that destination, who is catching the water as the wave breaks, is the part of this story that almost nobody is talking about. That minimum payment mechanic, borrowing $5,000 and paying back nearly $13,000. Does that math change how you think about carrying a balance? Drop your answer in the comments below. Because the interest rate story is only half of it, the real question is, who's collecting all that money on the other end? Every dollar of interest the middle class pays flows into someone else's income statement. Here's who is catching it. In 2025 alone, Americans paid $253 billion in credit card interest and fees. Let that number sit for a second. The cumulative total since 2010 has now crossed $2.1 trillion, more than the entire outstanding balance of student loan debt in this country. That is not a debt crisis, that is a revenue stream, and it flows in one direction. Interest income from credit cards is a significant revenue source for banks. Among just the 5 largest card-issuing banks, interest income from credit cards totaled around $120 billion in 2025, roughly a third of their total interest income. One product, 1/3 of the revenue engine of the largest financial institutions on earth, and the product only works if the middle class keeps carrying a balance. Credit card banks have more than doubled their profit margins since the financial crisis by widening the spread between their cost of borrowing and the interest rates they charge to cardholders. When the Fed raises rates, banks pass the increase to cardholders almost immediately. When the Fed cut rates from 4.5% at the end of 2024 down to 3.625% by the end of 2025, banks kept their APRs high, actually growing their margins from 16.8% to 17.1%. The system adjusts fast when rates go up. It moves slowly, if at all, when they come back down. That asymmetry isn't an accident. It's the business model. The credit scoring system makes it self-reinforcing. The score that determines your interest rate, the one that decides whether you pay 14% or 24%, is partly built on something called credit utilization. Carry zero balance, and the score can actually dip. Carry a balance, pay on time, and the score climbs. The system literally rewards participation in debt. It does not reward elimination of it. The pitch was that credit was freedom. The fine print was that the freedom had a 21% APR, and your score would suffer if you tried to leave. Roughly 111 million Americans, about 50% of active cardholders, carry credit card debt from month to month. That is not a failure of personal discipline at scale. That is a system operating exactly as designed. Approximately 68 million people, as of late 2025, qualify as debt-stressed, defined as individuals whose credit card utilization rate is 30% or higher. Despite representing only 30% of all cardholders, these debt-stressed borrowers carry 63% of the nation's total credit card debt, nearly $800 billion. The burden is not distributed evenly. It is concentrated precisely where people can least afford the compounding. Americans paid an estimated $181 billion in credit card interest charges in 2025, more than double the $75 billion paid in 2021. 4 years. Doubled, while wages moved incrementally. While the cost of housing, healthcare, and groceries kept climbing, the gap that the previous section described between what things cost and what paychecks cover is now generating record income for the institutions that offered to fill it. The middle class is not failing at personal finance. It is succeeding, with remarkable consistency, at participating in a system that was architecturally designed to extract from it. The minimum payment structure maximizes interest extraction. The credit scoring system incentivizes carrying debt. The rate asymmetry ensures that banks capture upside when borrowing costs rise and protect their margins when they fall. None of this is incidental. It is the product, and the $253 billion that flowed out of middle-class households in interest and fees last year is the proof of concept. Not that the middle class is irresponsible, but that the system is working exactly as its architects intended. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing the financial system explained the way it actually works, not the way it's sold to you, because this is only one wave in a much larger flood.